Um, so normally I'm normally safely hidden behind a keyboard, and every so often I escape. And tonight is one of those evenings, so lucky you. Tonight we're continuing, I think finishing our series on the top 5 tips for being a boring, passive Christian who never makes an impact on anyone or anything, or TFTB, FBABPCWNMAIOAOA for short. And I've been given the final topic, keep busy, remain unchanged. If you want to lead a boring life, keep busy. Or perhaps conversely, if you want to lead a fruitful and an effective life as a follower of Jesus, perhaps busyness might be getting in the way. Now, I'm going to just admit something before we start. I am quite possibly, amongst us, one of the worst people at being too busy. So that either qualifies me or wildly disqualifies me from speaking this evening. You can decide by the end. There's a brilliant scene in a now very retro film, I realized 20-something years ago, called Shaun of the Dead. Has anyone seen that? You are my people, thank you. I think it was described as a zombie rom-com, and it starts with the lead character, played by Simon Pegg, on his commute to work. The following day, he's on the same commute, but now there's been a zombie apocalypse, and yet he doesn't notice. He is in his own world, he's doing his own thing, utterly unaware of the chaos around him. And I gather the writers talked about how they wanted to make the point that we are so absorbed and so busy, would we even notice? Well, certainly we can end up coasting through life on a wave of activity and kind of wonder where the time's gone. You see, we live in a busy world, and a world that values busyness. When you ask someone how they are, one of the standard responses, other than fine, is that they are busy. It's baked into our culture. It's the burden we feel obliged to bear and also tell people about as often as possible. We are busy. Technological advances have always promised us more free time and less work. It's apparently how they advertised washing machines in the 1950s. The time freed up could be given to leisure. It's also what they promised email would do in the 1990s, speeding up our business and making us more efficient. And don't get me started on MS Teams. It's also what AI promises or possibly threatens with us now. Perhaps it will. Though there is a pattern that emerges. As soon as we've delegated a task to some form of technology, 20 new tasks appear in their place. We just can't help ourselves. We are busy. We've got lives to lead, bills to pay. The reality is you've got to make a living. Maybe you're part of the gig economy with a couple of side hustles and a passion project that you're working on in your spare time. The idea of the 9 to 5 feels kind of quaint and naive. Now we can work 24/7 on holiday or maybe even right now. We're busy. If it's not work, it's social media. So many Insta Reels to catch up on, the latest Substack to read, or whatever it is you're supposed to be at now. Then there's a dreaded red dot on every app, alerting you that there's something new to respond to or consume. Declaring email bankruptcy is now a thing. Have you heard this? Apparently you can have an unread email amnesty where you archive all your unread emails so that they remain accessible but not visible. And the idea is that people will contact you if it's that important. Apparently there are even services that will contact people for you. We are busy. What about Hinge? Those unsuitable matches and frivolous connections aren't going to maintain themselves. Because we've got to keep moving forwards if we're going to find that special person. And you've got to schedule in the gym, or park run, or CrossFit, or Pilates, or High Rocks, or whatever it is that is your jam. Because staying healthy is important, right? And you've got to look the part. And don't get me started on looks maxing. We are so busy. And that's before we factor in maintaining any meaningful relationships with our friends or having any time for ourselves. And you kind of wonder, how did we get here? Maybe to some extent we are hostages to the 24/7 world we live in. Our diaries are tightly scheduled, every moment's accounted for, though perhaps also we're a bit complicit. It's strange when you think about it that we place such a high value on being busy. We complain about it to each other. We sigh and explain how exhausting our lives are. But I wonder if there's a hidden motive here. In some ways, is being busy a sign of importance? It's a form of social capital where we can show the world just how successful we are, whether it's in business or our social lives or romantic and family lives. How on earth will you know that I'm important if I'm not busy? And if we have so much going on, we surely must be valuable and important people. And so it's with a degree of feigned martyrdom that we carry our busyness, sighing our way through conversations and glancing at our watches or phones to check when we need to move on to the next thing. Now clearly, unless you take up holy orders and move to a monastery or a convent, or withdraw entirely from the world, busyness is going to be a feature of our lives. So what can be done? Well, in this series, we've been looking at things that stop us being effective followers of Jesus. Now, I don't know whether you have seen the Snickers advert. You're not yourself, not you, when you're hungry. That's it. Well, my alternative talk for tonight is, you're not you when you're busy. We want to be our authentic selves, and hopefully to be effective followers of Jesus too. But what is all this busyness doing to us? Well, I'd suggest maybe three things. It robs us of peace. It results in us not being present with others. And it results in us not being so present with God. Now, we're going to come back to those points later. But let's get into our passage for tonight, which is in the book of Luke. And we find the story of Martha and Mary in chapter 10, starting at verse 38. There it is. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." So let's get into it. Well, first things first, we've got two sisters, Martha and Mary. Jesus stops by Martha's house with his disciples. Now, in the illustrated children's Bible, Martha is always preparing food for people. Have you heard that? Yeah? Apparently, that's actually a sort of contemporary interpretation, and she probably may have been doing other more important business matters. But for the sake of ease, and because I find it relatable, let's imagine she's whipping up a feast for Jesus and the disciples. She has guests in her home, likely without much warning, and there'd be a lot of social responsibility on her to look after them. Now, given this account predates Deliveroo by a couple of thousand years, and slightly before Domino's started delivering, although I've had ones where I've had to wait nearly that long, she might be forgiven for being rather stressed. Martha's irritated by Mary sitting at Jesus' feet and listening to him rather than helping her. She doesn't ask Mary to help, but instead she appeals to Jesus. Presumably, she imagines Jesus is going to chastise Mary for her laziness. But that's not how it goes down. He gently and kindly challenges Martha's attitude. "Martha, Martha, you are upset about many things, but few things are needed." You've got to wonder how Martha received this. Did she stop what she was doing and sit down at Jesus' feet with her sister? Did she carry on preparing the food resentfully? It's easy to forget that Jesus' comment and challenge to her is not unsolicited. It's not him just sort of looking at the scene and making a proclamation. It's in response to her accusation of laziness against her sister. And it's also worth pointing out that this is not the first and only time that Martha is going to encounter Jesus. They're clearly friends. She appears a number of times in the Gospels. She's the sister of Lazarus. And so this is not going to be the one opportunity that she gets to spend with Jesus. So what's going on? Well, this passage generally gets preached with the message that rather than doing things, we need to stop, spend time with God. And sometimes there's a bonus discussion about grace and works thrown in for good measure. This kind of seems a bit simplistic though, right? If working is always bad and choosing to sit at Jesus' feet is the right answer, where does that leave us? I mean, if it's taken to its logical end, we wouldn't be able to work, or indeed anything else. Peaceful destitution is evidently not the will of God for you or for me. So clearly, it cannot be that simple. And we can't really help the way our society is structured. So, to some extent, is it really our fault that our lives are so frantic? Well, I thought I'd take a few moments to try and defend Martha, or at least defend not spending all our time in quiet contemplation, since I'm not entirely sure that adding guilt and shame to the mix serves us very well or reflects the heart and ministry of Jesus. And on the flip side, there's also a risk that we dismiss this passage entirely as we don't feel it's very relevant to our culture. So I'm going to hope to avoid that. So I've come up with some defenses for Martha. Now, I'm a lawyer. You probably don't know, you may know that, but I don't do stuff in court. That's more Gwyn's world. But I've created some defenses for Martha, and we can discuss them in a bit. So number one, maybe it's her personality type that would naturally lead her to being busy and active. Oh, we're jumping ahead. Oh, we'll come back to that in a second. Number two, maybe it's her love language, showing acts of service or quality time. Maybe it's her ministry gift, showing hospitality. Well, let's have a quick look at those. Amongst us tonight, there will be a huge range of personality types. Some of us more introverted, others more extroverted, some more reflective, others more confident, some led by their gut, and some more analytical. And there are loads of personality categorization systems out there. Whether you subscribe to Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or John's, what's John's one? Thank you, Adventure, Truth-Telling, Caring Truth-Telling, there you go. Or whether you consider the whole idea to be reductive and unscientific, we do have to admit that we are all wired differently. And things that are helpful for some people are incredibly unhelpful for others. Now, I'm always cautious about ascribing moral value to things that are just features of our makeup as people. And let me give you an example. I am not a morning person. This is a bit of a rant, by the way, so just bear with me. I'm just not a morning person, full stop. For those of you who have the misfortune of dealing with me early in the morning, you'll be able to attest that I am neither sociable nor cheerful. However, as the day wears on, and usually after a mid-morning coffee, I do become increasingly more pleasant and productive. I'm a night owl. And what I do object to is the moral superiority of those who are larks. You know who you are. And when I watch a reel with some cheerful influencer who's got up at 5 in the morning and now considers themselves to be virtuous, I can't help but sneer. Now, God bless you if you hate your beds that much. But I'm afraid it's not going to entice me to set my alarm any earlier. Now, I wonder if it's the same with busyness. We live in a world where being busy, a busy, active person, is generally seen as positive. But is Jesus saying the opposite here to Martha? Is there moral virtue in stillness over activity? Well, I'm not sure that can be the case, because Jesus has a pretty active ministry. Heals people, preaches, travels around. I mean, he does rest, but he does a lot. So I'm not sure activity in itself is being questioned here. It's not that the issue isn't that Martha has things to do. It's her resentment and anxiety which results from her attitude that he's challenging. Okay, different tack. What about love languages? If it's not personality types, another way of looking at it. Now, as I understand, there are 5 languages which include words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. Perhaps we've got a case of that here in this passage. Mary's all about quality time, whilst Martha is all about acts of service. Maybe that's what's happening. I quite like the 5 love languages, although with anything they tend to oversimplify things. And I found it helpful, too, to consider how I both express love and receive it. And even more helpful to consider how others show love and indeed receive it. Now, perhaps you know which of those love languages you find most natural to show, demonstrate, and to receive. And hopefully, we can see that they all have validity, even the ones that don't come naturally to us. So is Martha here just guilty of having a different love language? Well, perhaps it started out like that for her. Motivated by love for Jesus, she works hard for her guests. Though if it's how it started, it falls apart pretty quickly. And perhaps we can all be guilty of focusing on the performance of expressing love and can lose sight of the purpose. We can become fixated on it being perfect and get frustrated and miss the point that we were trying to achieve all along. Okay. Maybe you don't like those. Maybe another way of thinking about it is in the context of ministry. In 1 Peter 4:10, we read, "Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each of you should use whatever gifts received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms." This is often referred to as the gift of hospitality. And lots of people consider this to be a spiritual gift. And certainly there's an encouragement to pursue hospitality, which appears actually throughout the New Testament and the Bible. So what Martha is doing seems wholly in line with this teaching. She's serving out the gifts that God has given her. Well, the eagle-eyed amongst you might say, doesn't this take place prior to Jesus' ascension and the dispensation of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost? There you see, yeah. A few nods there, sage nods. Well, I mean, that's true. That's true. But if hospitality is a gift of the Spirit, then Jesus is not going to dismiss it that easily. Because he knows the Spirit. In any case, it's a theme that appears throughout the Bible in the form of welcoming strangers. And let's not forget that Jesus himself says, when you did this for the least of my brothers, you did this for him. So if we accept that the activity of being hospitable is a positive thing, then what is happening in our passage today? Well, I wonder if we can become trapped in our gifts and ministries. Maybe we start off with excitement and have the joy of seeing God working through us. However, over time, we start to feel trapped. Our gifts are no longer a gift. Maybe God's wanting to do something new in us and release gifting in a different direction, but we stick doggedly to what we know, eventually burning out. I've certainly had to slam the brakes on a few times before ministry consumed me. Perhaps that's your experience too. Jesus does not look down on inactivity. He welcomes rest in him. Throughout his ministry, he withdraws from the crowds to be with his Father. Okay. So I'm not sure how convinced you are by my arguments in support of Martha, but I guess what I'm trying to see is Jesus really saying that activity is bad, or is there something more subtle going on? And I think what we can see from the passage is the problem of what busyness can do to us. Martha has lost sight of what really matters and is stressed and miserable, lashing out at her sister in her complaints to Jesus. There's no doubt that Jesus considers what Mary is doing in spending quality time with him to be the best course of action in that moment. And he defends her right to do it, though I'm not sure that amounts to a commandment to stop all work and activity entirely. So, earlier on I suggested that being too busy can have 3 effects on us. It can rob us of peace. It results in us not being present with others, and it results in us not being present with God. And I guess if we flip those round, not being too busy means that we can have peace. It means that we can be present with others, and it means we can be present with God. You're not you when you're busy. Do you have peace? We sing a lot about it. Do you have it? I don't mean a permanent state of zen or calm. I mean an underlying security in who you are, in God's love for you. Do you have that peace? Do you have that contentment in your life? Busyness has a habit of destroying our peace, though perhaps it's the result of our lack of peace that makes us busy in the first place. Maybe if we are more secure in who we are, more content with what God has given us, we might be less inclined to work ourselves to the bone. Is our need to prove ourselves robbing us from the rest that we really need? Have we become so used to filling our calendars that we are missing experiencing real life? Maybe we're keeping busy to avoid the silence. Yet Mary seems to get it, and she's not allowed the pressure of the moment to distract her from what she knows to be a good thing. You're not you when you're busy. Do we have time for others? Immediately preceding this passage we read tonight, we have the story of the Good Samaritan. You probably know that story. A man is walking to town, is beaten up and left by the road, bloodied and bruised. First, a priest walks by, crosses to the other side of the road, offers no help. Then a Levite does the same. Finally, a Samaritan, who would have been an outsider in that culture, stops and helps the man. And Jesus tells this story to answer the question, who is my neighbor? So the main point of the parable is to broaden our understanding of those we are to take care of and to demolish cultural and social barriers that stop us from loving others. But one of the things I've often wondered is, why did the priest and Levite walk by on the other side of the road? I mean, these are good people. Well, they should have been. Perhaps they feared the ritual impurity that might come from touching a wounded man. Perhaps they feared they might suffer the same fate as him if they were to stop and help. Perhaps they were busy and had places to go and didn't really have the inclination to stop. We're not told, and it's not the point of the parable, but I don't think it's entirely coincidental that it appears directly before this story with Mary and Martha. When we're too busy, people get in the way. We have things to get done, places to be. Maybe our patience levels are on the low side. That's when we become aggressive drivers or walkers. I wonder how many opportunities God has for us that we miss out because we're simply distracted and busy with other things. Not just opportunities to serve, but opportunities to be present, to encounter others, and to encounter God. So are we so busy that we don't get to be ourselves? You are a wonderful and beautiful group of people. I promise. God's given each of you a distinct character and personality and specific gifts and talents. You are important in the world, not because of what you do, but in the outworking of who you are. The Bible says the fruit of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. And all of this is available to us when we have the Holy Spirit in our lives. In fact, these characteristics will naturally occur in us when we are filled with the Spirit, though perhaps we don't give them space and time to ripen. When I decide to create time, I find I'm more kind, I'm more patient, and it's not the huge act of or effort of willpower. It's just waiting to come out when I make the room for it. When we're not overwhelmed with busyness and stress, we have the best opportunity to be those people that God fully intended and equipped us to be. My mum, 81, is still able to drive. I'm not going to make any more comments because this is going online, but she can drive. Nevertheless, she likes to take the opportunity to get the bus to the local shops. And I often wonder why she does this, because it's a lot less efficient than just driving to the shops and parking in the car park of the supermarket. However, I've realized from the various stories she's told me that she enjoys the opportunity to meet people, to hear their stories, and to talk about Jesus. I frequently, and I mean frequently, hear stories of people who strike up conversations with her at bus stops and invariably end up pouring their hearts out to her. She has time for them. It flows out of her naturally, and she normally comments that she doesn't speak to people, they speak to her. Perhaps in having time and awareness of others, they feel seen and able to speak to her. I believe she has found the secret to not being too busy for people. And I've just been trying that myself. I was at the hospital today visiting a friend, and we were waiting. We were made to wait while the doctor did his rounds for about 15 minutes. And there was me and another lady who was also, she was waiting to see her mother, I discovered. And the way I discovered that was because I looked at her and smiled, and we talked. And she told me all about her mother's illness, about the kidney stones, about her anxieties. Normally, I would have wanted to have timed it right, and I would normally be frustrated that I was made to wait 15 minutes, because I've got places to be. Maybe we can find the secret to not being too busy for people. You're not yourself when you're busy. So lastly, when we are too busy, sometimes we leave no time to spend with God. Now, it's obviously the obvious point, and I guess I kind of had to land here, but I'm not trying to provoke guilt about what we may or may not be doing, just to encourage us to be present in the time we are spending with God, particularly in allowing him room to speak words of truth that we need to hear. Attendance is easy. Presence is a lot more challenging. There's a call of simplicity in Jesus' words. He says, "You are worried about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one." The more deeply rooted we can be in God, the more confident we can be of his unconditional love for us, the more content we can be in who he's made us, the less we need to prove or achieve. And maybe you need to hear that from God tonight. There's a startling simplicity to the Christian life. It's not going to be found in spiritual help books, self-help books, or legalistic ritual practices. It's only to be found in one person, in Jesus. And yes, we can spend more time with him, but maybe let's just try and be present in the time that we have. To be open to his voice. As I was just about to come up, I heard the words and heard particularly what David said. It made me think of something that I've found very helpful over the years. There are two words for time there's two particular words for time in Greek, as I understand it. One of them is kairos and one of them is chronos. Chronos refers to the chronological passage of time. Kairos is like a moment in time. You know when you get those sorts of line in the sand moments, when it's like when time stands still and you suddenly can see something or understand something. Maybe an event, maybe something someone says, maybe when God speaks to you. And I've often found it helpful just to kind of be alert to the kairos moments amongst the chronos. We're in the chronos, but maybe God's got a kairos moment for you. A moment, a line in the sand when he's going to say something to you that is going to be powerful. And the danger is we are so busy in the chronos that we miss the kairos. Anyway, I wanted to land on this passage and then a few questions and then we're going to move. So, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So, do you need to slow down? Are there things you need to set down? Are you physically present with those around, but mentally moving on to the next event? Are we walking to the other side of the road because we just don't have time to engage? Maybe our ministry has become a burden to us and left us tired and resentful. Do we have room to simplify? Just slow down a little bit. What might we look like if we do that? what fruit might ripen? Maybe we can create some time in the day which is unallocated, unscheduled, to be intentionally inefficient with our time. Because I do believe that where we create space, we might just be a little more aware of ourselves, a little more aware of those around us, and a little bit more aware of God with us. And who knows where that might take us. We're going to have a time, I think we'll call the band back up. I think we've got time for a song, haven't we? And maybe some of those things have resonated with you. Maybe you're just living a wonderful, peaceful life, and God bless you if that's the case. But actually, maybe you have felt that pressure, and maybe you just need to hear the words to slow down. Just be assured of God's love for you. Be assured that he wants the very best for you, and be assured of the fullness of life that comes when we can just give him room to work in our lives.